You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Lohman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Lohman.
Hey everybody, welcome to the House of Sunny podcast. Today I have a guest co-host, Walter Hudson. Welcome to the House of Sunny.
It's great to be here.
You've been on before. I'm sure my hardcore fans recognize you. We did a great show on racism. I think that was one of my favorite podcasts ever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for taking over. Doug is just busy, and so he'll hopefully be back next week. We'll see. I have another announcement I just want to quickly make. I'm going to be a guest host on a show called Unsafe Space. Have you heard of that, Walter?
Yes, I have. Wow.
I've been a guest on there before. I'm friends with Carter, the guy who is one of the main co-hosts, and he just called me yesterday and asked me if I'd fill in for Carrie for the next 2 weeks. So it's both Fridays and Mondays. Fridays, they have more of a round table. And then Monday, it's usually just Carter and Carrie.
Right.
So it'll be Friday, Monday, 11 a.m. Pacific. And if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, I will post a link the day of, but just FYI, that's happening. I'm excited about that. As a result, I may actually not do my own podcast next week because that's kind of a bigger podcast.
Right.
And two days of that, I don't know. Or maybe I'll just do a casual live show or something on Wednesday. That's a little easier for me on
Sure.
Thursday. Okay, so let's just jump into it. I know, Walter, that you've read Atlas Shrugged, right?
Multiple times. Yes,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about starting it again.
But you've read Atlas Shrugged. I've read Atlas Shrugged multiple times. I was thinking about something this week. I don't want to give any spoilers for people who haven't read it. So I'm going to talk generally about a couple of characters. And when I get into the spoiler, I'll mention it. And at that point, just tune out, you guys. You really don't want this book spoiled for you. So I wanted to remind you of a character, Floyd Ferris. Do you remember that guy? He's like head of the State Science Institute.
Right.
So he
doesn't he assume that position later on in the story? Or is he always?
He's always the head, but he's like the bureaucrat head.
Right.
So he doesn't do any science. He's technically a scientist, but he doesn't do any science. But he's the political guy. He's the guy who gets money from Congress and who doles it out. And so that's Floyd Ferris. Who does that sound like?
Another guy with an F in his name.
Right? I mean, that's Anthony Fauci.
Yeah.
Right there. The guy, the bureaucrat at the head of the Government Science Institute.
Right.
Whose job, it's just purely political. He's not a researcher. He's not a physician. He's not at anyone's bedside.
Right.
He gets the money. He convinces people to give him more money and more power, and he doles it out to the scientists under him and the researchers under him. And then you have a character called Robert Stadler, who's this genius scientist. And he took a job with the State Science Institute because he wanted the money for his pure research. You know, he's a very brilliant scientist, and he just didn't want to have to think about the practical life things of getting money and all that stuff. So he got lured into the State Science Institute, where all this money just flowed at him, and they got to put his name on, we've got Dr. Robert Stadler working for us. So they benefited by having this really great scientist that everybody trusted and believed in, this pure scientist. They got his name and he got their money.
Right.
And he has this line that he tells Dagny Taggart, the protagonist of the novel. He says, when she's like, but, and he says, what can you do when you have to deal with people? Do you remember that?
Yep.
I swear, like, when you live the novel, when you start living the novel in real life, these things take on more meaning. And now I know what he meant by that. What he meant was, I have to deal with, I can't take a moral stand. I have to toe the line. And what's going on at this point in the novel is that there is this brand new invention, this new technological invention called Reardon steel. And Dagny Taggart goes to see Robert Stadler to beg him to take back the State Science Institute's pronouncement that it's unsafe. Okay. So State Science Institute, a bureaucratic organization, lies because the government, that's what the government wants, because there's this other steel producer who doesn't want competition. And there's these other people that are in the steel business. They don't want a new metal on the market. So through all these channels of influence and pull, it goes down to the State Science Institute to come out and say, this metal isn't safe. No one should use it. Dagny Taggart goes and begs Robert. He's like, this metal's good. You've seen the paperwork. I have all the reports here. Please read the reports. I know you can read this stuff. You're brilliant. And then you can't let your name be attached to this lie. And he says, what can you do when you have to deal with people? And I think of all the physicians and the doctors in the institutions right now, working for big hospitals, working for research universities, prestigious places, really good doctors who are actually capable, smart people. And how many of them have totally folded to the government's flip-flopping lies about what's going on? And that they're just like, well, it's my grant money. My research is really important. And so I just have to do this thing to get through so that I can keep doing this important research. What can you do when you have to deal with people?
Yep. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I was listening to you and Doug's last conversation on this, and the comparison that popped into my head is that there's a very distinct difference between the practice of medicine and the conduct of quote unquote public health. What we're seeing right now, and what we've seen for quite some time, is public health, not medicine. Medicine doesn't operate like this. Medicine doesn't turn to institutional authorities to determine what's true and what's false. And it certainly doesn't turn to institutional authorities to prescribe treatments for individual people. And it doesn't engage in prescriptions in mass. It doesn't say the populace shall take X, Y, or Z, or we prescribe X, Y, and Z for the populace. You look at a particular patient and their particular circumstances and the specifics of what's going on with them and their context. And then you develop your diagnosis, your prognosis, and your treatment based on what you see objectively. That's medicine. Public health is something entirely different. And that's what we're witnessing right now. And to your point, we're and respecting your desire to stay out of spoiler territory with Atlas Shrugged, suffice it to say, we're in part 3.
Yeah.
we're towards the end.
I feel like, I mean, especially with what they've done to the economy in the last year, which I don't think we fully are feeling yet. I don't think it's, I mean, I'm hearing all these rumors like, oh, we just used the last part to repair our last truck, and then the next part it's back ordered till January, and who knows if we'll get it. It's like, America had a lot to sort of skate on.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, that's going to dry up, and we haven't solved the supply chain issues. I mean, right. There's still a lot of tankers off the coast of Southern California. I don't know what's going on in other ports, but something's wrong. I don't really know if it's staffing or what. I haven't really looked into it, but we are. And these characters are so rich and so true to what's happening. I just thinking about the demonstration that Ayn Rand makes of what happens when government is involved in science and when science becomes politics. And then you have a situation where somebody's come up with something and then the government just lies and says, I mean, I'm just thinking of treatments and stuff. Oh no, that's not true. And they're just bald-faced lying. And they're doing it for the Orrin Boyle of pharmacy companies,
Right.
And And then the demonstration of the different kind of business person and their interact and what they do when the State Science Institute pronounces reared metal unsafe. And you have the kind that cancel their orders and
Right.
follow the right. And okay, now we have companies mandating vaccines because they told me to,
Right.
or this is the pressure I'm getting, so I'll just mandate the vaccine because that's what the in crowd is doing. And I don't want to stick my neck out and I don't want to take a risk. And then you have the businessmen who go, no, I'm standing by you, Hank. I'm going to keep my order stands. And you're reading the novel and you're like, oh my God, these are the heroes. These are the people who aren't going to abandon Hank Reardon because some lying asshole, said to do so. They're thinking for themselves. They stand by what they think. And they believe in standing by the truth. And you read the novel and you think those people are heroes. And the reason that and then I wanted to play, I'm going to play this. I'm going somewhere with this, everybody. You probably already know where I'm going. But all right, then just to switch gears a little bit, I'm going to play this. Do you know who Dave Ramsey is, that radio show host? He talks about finances. He helps a lot of people with their personal finance questions. He's particularly good with helping people figure out how to get out of debt and really awful situations in their lives. So it's funny because I'm taking this clip off of the clip of another person's video. This is Anomaly. If you're not watching his stuff, he's really good. But he plays this clip of Dave Ramsey just talking about business mandates, just talking about these vaccine mandates and businessmen doing this. So because, what we're seeing is we have Biden mandating it, but let's say he didn't. You've already got businesses just stepping up to the plate to do this anyway. They don't necessarily need the government to force them with OSHA. You had a lot of companies already doing this, and part of it is because they're so regulated, or they get money from the government and they just want to be seen to toe the line. And this is that, well, what can you do when you deal with people? Or I don't want to stick my neck out. I don't want to risk my company by taking this risk. Dagny Taggart risked the entire company on betting that Reardon Metal worked.
Right.
And when she was right, it saved her company. It didn't just, she was taking a huge risk, but it ended up being, like any big risk that businessmen take, I think it usually ends in a positive. So anyway, okay, here's
a massive, massive audience of millions of people weighing in on a guest who told him that he will probably quit his job or get fired for refusing the mandates.
If I don't get the vaccine, it would be my firing date would be September 1st.
No, I think if these bozos are willing to put you on the street, I'm willing to put them on the street. This is happening all over America.
Yeah.
We've got large companies mandating vaccines, and people are leaving them in droves.
Okay.
So hospitals, I've talked to 20 people in healthcare in the past 3 or 4 weeks, and what's happening is that they're doing stuff like they're talking about doing with you, and the nurses are saying, I'm not taking this thing.
Dave Ramsey's completely right. All across the country, nurses are quote unquote holding.
So he's talking about how, he basically, let's see, I think there might have been more. Yeah.
Mandates.
I'm out. Yeah. I listen, I'm not signing up. So then what happens is they take where they've already got a nursing shortage at that hospital and they exasperate it. And then once they make the decision, then they go back and undo the decision because they realize how screwed they are because half their people walk out. It's like causing a strike.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of going on here.
Yeah, I got a feeling as soon as you find a job, they're going to change their mind.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I want to stay there anyway if they're willing to put the muscle on me like that.
Yeah, that's so. Again, being in the financial situation we are, thanks to you guys, I feel like I can leave. There's definitely a lot of my coworkers that feel like
you can leave because you can go make more.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear the caller say that Dave Ramsey helped put him in a financial
security because of your knowledge base and because of your licensing and because of your willingness to do what you do. And thank you for doing it, by the way.
I love his ideology there.
So the main thing I just wanted to highlight there is, there's a guy just saying, yeah, what are businesses doing? This is, you're telling people what medicine to take. That's crazy. That's not American, and screw them and go work for somebody else. And I hope there are enough companies left to work for to stand up, that are standing up to this, especially this OSHA thing. Any companies over 100, and I know there are companies that are suing, and I don't think they'll be able to do this. But in the meantime, it's a very scary time, and people don't want to lose. I know what it is. It's like, I have a kid, she's in school, we have a house, we have, like, I'm invested, and I'm afraid that we're going to get into a situation here where I have to take some kind of stand.
We've gotten to a point where the goals that they're trying to achieve no longer rest upon political ends. And what I mean by that is it is astounding in real time to watch as the Biden administration just tosses the Republic in the trash can, totally forgoes the Constitution, says we don't care. I mean, they did this with the moratorium on evictions, the eviction moratorium that was issued by the CDC. They said, the administration said it's not constitutional, we can't do it, and then did it anyway. And so you got to ask yourself, well, why are they willing to do it? And the reason is what you cited. It's that characteristic in some significant portion of the American soul that looks at the dictate and says, okay, what are you going to do when you deal with people? They're counting on the businesses to look down the barrel of the gun, whether it's loaded or not, just to look down the barrel of it and go, you got me. All right, fine. I'll mandate everything. And then if it ends up getting successfully challenged somewhere down the road, their objective has already been met, right? They've already got people to comply, which is what they were after in the first place.
Yeah, it's psychological. And also, they can afford to take whatever amount of time, and you can't,
Right.
They can afford to pass these laws, and then you have to sue, or you have to wait months to get your company back or your life back. That's no big deal to them. That's a huge deal to you. Right. So that you have all this to lose. They have nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose. And they can't even lose elections. Right. Anyway, here is an example of what to do when the government is coming at you with one of these things, rather than just fold. You reminded me of this as you were talking. Can you see this? Oh, wait a sec. Let me make sure the sound's on. Yeah. Sounds on. Okay, I'm gonna rewind this. Check this out. Okay, this cop is saying, move, move, move.
Nice.
You see that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well,
yep.
I guess
there's nothing here. Then. Yep. And that's perfect, because that's exactly how it will work.
I know.
This is entirely a giant bluff.
Yes.
Because the next step, what is the next step for that guy as that cop is stepping up on that guy on the curb? The only thing he could possibly do to continue on his course is to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And he's not going to do that.
Right.
So you don't have to move.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And it's the same thing with, now I'm not saying that Joe Biden won't pull the trigger, or that here in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz won't pull the trigger. They might. I'm saying make them.
Yeah.
Make them do what Reardon did when he was put on trial. Tell them flat out, Show it for what it is. Bring your guns.
Yeah.
Force them to be honest about what it is that they're doing.
Another great example from Atlas Shrugged. So, all right. So you have, I guess what I'm trying to say is businessmen out there must take a moral stand and say, no, not going to mandate these vaccines. Even if they think it's a good idea, they cannot do this because it is contributing to the atmosphere of totalitarian control in medicine. If you are seen to give in to this, even if you're like, well, but see, I want people to be safe, and what, you cannot do this. Businesses out there, American businesses, as many as possible, have to take a stand and scoop up these great people, these really moral and ethical people who say, no, I'm not going to take medicine I don't think it's right for me to take. I don't care who tells me it's wrong, and I'm not going to do it. Or if I do it, that's none of your business. And I'm not producing a card, which is that's kind of where I'm at. Nobody needs to know my vax status.
That's right.
It's none of your business.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm not going to qualify my statement with, well, I'm vaccinated, but I really think everybody shouldn't mandate it. Fuck you. You don't need to know my vax status.
Yeah.
It's my business. Whatever happened to like mind your business? The American sense of mind your business and of self-responsibility. You're afraid of the virus? Get vaccinated or do what you need to do. Find a doctor who's willing to do the Math Plus treatment, who's on board with that, or whatever you need to do. Isolate. You are responsible for you.
Yeah. Yeah. My problem with the qualification, people say, well, I'm vaccinated, but is the motive for offering it. The motive for offering that qualification is to endow yourself with credibility. So you're yielding to the premise that to not get vaccinated makes you uncredible.
Yes.
That you're not qualified to have an opinion unless you've been vaccinated.
Such a good point, Walter. That's an excellent point. So yeah, you're being kind of cowardly.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're also making it harder for people who really legitimately don't want to take this medicine. You're making it harder for them to not look like fringe kooks.
Right. Yeah, it's very important to recognize the hidden premises that are not always stated, but are implied in the context of what somebody is saying. And so, why would you even start a sentence, I'm vaccinated, but? There's really only one reason to do that. And that's because you feel as though being vaccinated lends credibility to whatever you're going to say next.
Yeah, very good point. Excellent point. Okay, so I believe it is moral for a business to not require to say no to this. I believe that's the moral thing to do. I think it's immoral to mandate the vaccine for your employees, especially in this climate.
Correct.
I'm thinking back, okay, can I think of examples where it might make sense? If I'm a company that sends people over to South America to walk in the jungles, I might mandate that they get a malaria treatment before they go or whatever. Like I could see that being a part of what I have to rationally expect, or I'm going to be dealing with a lot of sickness and possibly injured people, seriously injured people. Which ultimately not just the worrying about my, feeling like worrying about my employees, but the financial impact of that on a company. I could see that being an issue. So, but that, that was like a really big exception that used to be in the world. And somebody brought up the other day, well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what I wanted to say, so that is my take. And I know I probably haven't proven that to every philosopher, but I don't think it's ethical right now to mandate this vaccine. I think that it's contributing to the takeover of our country. And when you're a business and you're a private company and you mandate the vaccine and people can go elsewhere and work elsewhere, so you're just going to do it because you know, you don't want to stick your neck out. Reardon metal may not be safe. I don't know. I'm no scientist. I'm only going to trust what Fauci says. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the attitude. I think the doctors are the Robert Stadler saying, what can you do when you have to deal with people? Like, they know the truth because they're smart enough to know, but they get their grant money from Fauci. So they're just going to toe the line, and they're going to lie or not say anything or not counter it. There are a lot of doctors doing that. And that makes the ones standing up all the more heroic, as far as I'm concerned. And it's the businessmen mandating the vaccine that are more like the businessmen in Atlas Shrugged that just canceled their orders. They don't want to stick their neck out. They'll wait and see till somebody like Dagny Taggart takes a stand. You know, that's what they're counting on. Well, if there was no Dagny Taggart, then Reardon Metal just would disappear, and Hank Reardon would lose all his effort and investment. So what, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So very disappointed in the Ayn Rand Institute that mandated the vaccine for their staff at the summer conference. I heard about that, and I just incredibly disappointed in that. And they also required that anyone who wasn't vaccinated or didn't prove that they were vaccinated who attended it to take a PCR test before arriving, like within 72 hours. But if you were vaccinated, you didn't have to. No accommodation for antibodies, which is like 27 times more protection than a vaccine. No accommodation for that. No accommodation for medical exemptions, as far as I know. And, you know, discrimination again. And also just, it's dumb because we know now, and we've known for months, that the vaccinated and the vaccinated and the unvaccinated contract and spread at the same rate.
Right.
I hope that doesn't get this video banned on YouTube that I just said that, but
I think you can always
know that it came out of Israel. It's Pfizer data. It's not like it's Pfizer data. I'm just reporting what they say.
The algorithm trick you need to learn is some people say that it's spread at the same rate, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated.
So, you know, but more than the fact that it's irrational, which is disappointing, it's a very cowardly thing to do. It's immoral, in my opinion, in today's in the context of what's happening. And additionally, an article came out in American Thinker that kind of outlined there's this doctor that everybody at ARI is depending on. His name is Amesha Jala. I've been a critic of his for a while because he was for the California vaccine mandate for all little kids. And so I became aware of him, you know, as somebody who's around objectivists. He was saying this in objectivist circles years ago. And there are other doctors that are objectivists going, no, that's immoral. That's statism. You can't force medicine on children.
Right.
And it's not a private company. It's government schools too. But that, of course, becomes all private schools. I mean, if there's a government mandate and all government schools are doing something, you can't be a private holdout and expect not to get sued or expect not to have the parents go crazy. And so then you have that situation again where you have a private business trying to decide, well, do I take a stand? How do I, you know?
It's very important to emphasize that point, that beyond mandates, you also just have the natural trajectory of litigation that happens based upon government positions. So the CDC puts out a recommendation that people in indoor spaces, whether they're vaccinated or not, should be wearing masks. That recommendation now becomes corporate policy from sea to shining sea. Why? Because they have to? No. but because if they get sued, they're going to lose, because the lawyer who's suing them is going to point to the CDC recommendation and say, you're not doing what the government recommends.
That's exactly. Neglect or negligence or something like that. So especially if a kid got hurt, I mean, and it is possible you can get injured from disease.
Right.
So if a kid was hurt and then the family sued, I mean, you're out of business.
Right.
So
it's important to recognize that, because what it affects in reality is that mandates don't have to be explicit. The mere existence of a recommendation has become a de facto mandate. And so as advocates for individual rights, as advocates for liberty, we need to react accordingly instead of pretending. I see so many people who consider themselves to be individualists and liberty people online who are arguing in defense of private organizations and private companies and private business, quote unquote private, because they're like, well, it's not a mandate, it's a recommendation. Use your brain, analyze the context. In effect, it is a mandate, because ultimately what is being sued? Being sued is evoking the force of the state. And so they created a context in which it's possible to be sued for making a decision that you otherwise would not make. You're not making the decision based upon the rational consideration of the circumstances and the facts and the real science.
Yeah.
You're making your decision based upon the regulatory environment. That is statism.
Yeah. And so, and yes. And therefore, the truth of America is we are in 100% fascism right now.
Yes, absolutely.
There isn't a single company out there that isn't at risk of government shutting them down for whatever. There are no rights anymore. We are in pure fascism.
Yep.
And in that environment, the Ayn Rand Institute mandates vaccines.
Yep.
And I'm sure they also had to think about, well, if somebody comes and they have COVID and they spread it and someone dies or gets really ill, we'll get sued. You know, I mean, they have insurance and stuff too, but I'm sure they probably thought about that. And so they just said, well, I'm not going to stick my neck out. I mean, they're basically the pussy businessmen from Atlas Shrugged who wouldn't stand up for weird metal. And I'm so disappointed. Of all the organizations, I would like to see them take a stand, and I hope that they rethink. And I don't know what they're doing within their org. I don't know if they're mandating it for all their people, but they did mandate it for the staff at the conference. And they treated attendees differently depending on their status. So very disappointed. I really deeply hope that they change their mind, because unfortunately they have influence. And
yes,
anyone, Ayn Rand has a lot of great ideas that could really help our culture and help us get out of this mess. Atlas Shrugged is a genius novel. And I fear that people are not reading her because of what they're seeing from the people at the Institute. And those people are not following her philosophy. And then people are like, oh my gosh, those guys are, that's Ayn Rand. She's terrible. But it's really just, Ayn Rand Institute mandates vaccines. So that's objectivism. Objectivism must suck.
It's funny to hear you say this, because, and I know this isn't a analogy that's going to be very popular with this audience, but I've heard this argument before, or this conundrum before. You stated at the outset, I'm not an objectivist. That's true. I'm an admirer of Ayn Rand, and I integrate much of the objectivist philosophy into my thinking, but I am a Christian. Yeah. And as a Christian, I've heard this in the religious context quite a bit of, man, I really feel as though people aren't giving the faith a chance, so to speak, because of what they're seeing from such and such organization or such and such religious figure. And I think the answer in both cases is the same, which is that, shame on you if you're letting that be the reason why you don't evaluate it on its own merits. I mean,
true. It's a fact, though. I mean, that
yes, that's true.
is just a human fact. I think, we judge books by their cover because we have to filter stuff out. You know, there's a lot of people to read and books to read and stuff. So why would you pick that up if you think it's just going to be, why read Atlas Shrugged if you think it's going to be a treatise for open immigration? You know what I'm saying? Which it is not. But the people at the head of the institute are for that, like some craziness.
Yeah.
And they're the ones speaking for, her at this point, which, let's just say, hey, everybody go to the primary source. I mean, Atlas Shrugged is a brilliant novel. And there are a lot of, we are in part 3, like you said.
Yes.
I'll just mention too, not only so Amesha Jala, their expert that they're relying on has praised Fauci. He has come out in support of the World Health Organization. He thinks the CDC is awesome. And what we really need is more money to go to the central government so they can create more infrastructure to track people. That to me sounds like a passport, and he has said, one of the creepiest things he said was, he said this on TV, that he was against curfews because curfews kept people inside rather than going out to restaurants. And out at restaurants, they can be monitored by the managers and the staff to social distance. But if they're home, they won't be complying. They won't be doing what they should be doing. So they should come out.
Socially distancing from each other.
Because we control the restaurants,
right?
The government, we control the restaurants, and we can tell people they have to sit so many feet apart. They have to wear a mask. They have, we can tell them what to do. If they're home, they might have 10 people at their table, all bunched up,
Yeah, it's I
don't know
that
how
not
a central planner attitude.
Right. It's very odd to consider that a guy like that with attitudes like that is somebody who's risen to prominence with an objectivist organization. But
he's their go-to.
Aren't they based in New York?
California.
They're based in California. Well, that's not much better.
No. Southern California, Irvine, I think.
But there's no doubt a cultural component to it as well, right? Just being immersed in that culture.
Sure.
And being surrounded by the social pressure to conform to all of the premises that are floating around, the worst premises about what COVID is and the threat it presents.
I don't think they're as much affected by their locale because Southern California, Orange County is very red, and people here are very, of all California, they're very resistant to all of this stuff. But they are they're sort of like academia worshipers. So I think they're impacted by the culture of the universities.
Right.
And I really think that, and they hire people to work for them that are just academics. They don't hire businessmen. They don't hire, do you hear my cat?
No. Good.
Meow, 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 like enough to torture you to death. And then one of their, and I don't know what they're all saying. I'm not paying that close of attention. I just have I hear things here and there. There's this article that came out, which I'll link to, this American Thinker article with all of these links to proof, because Amesha Jala is everywhere. He's on TV all over the place. He writes a ton of articles. One of his arguments for why it's okay to mandate this vaccine is that we already mandate flu, companies already mandate flu, and children are already mandated to take the full schedule vaccines and stuff in some states. And that is like that incremental statist strategy, right?
Right.
We'll push these mandatory vaccines in California, and then we can say, hey, companies already mandate these. What are you arguing about? What's your problem? This is already being done. You already gave in to the hospitals demanding their employees take the flu shot. What's different about this? And it's true. There is nothing different. And people didn't. I remember when the flu shot started getting mandated, and I was looking into that, and I was being told not to take it by my doctors. They're like, don't you dare take the flu shot. I had an autoimmune disease, and, you know, they're like, no, don't take this. First of all, those delivery systems can mess with your immune system as well as the drug itself. And they're not that effective because they don't really know what strain they're getting to and stuff like that. So, and yet they're mandating it for all the people that work in hospitals rather than figuring out just how to keep people from infecting each other in a hospital, which they actually do a pretty good job of, I think. I mean, they have HEPA filters, things like that. Anyway, getting off track, but that is what Ajala said. Oh, but we already mandate the flu shot, and we already mandate the vaccines for children. So this is not different. What's your objection? And then one of their paid thinkers, intellectuals, this is Ayn Rand Institute. His name is Ben Bayer. He said on Facebook, on a public post, that he believed that more businesses should mandate the vaccine. And he said that he was against Biden's OSHA mandate, not because it was immoral, but because it was a foolish policy. It was a little too heavy-handed.
A little bit too heavy-handed. Only eliminating the plenary power of all of the states and canceling the Constitution. Yeah, it's a little heavy-handed.
It's just foolish because it can be done another way with the pressure, which is what you were talking about, right? And I'm like, what? What? Okay, so I just want to publicly talk about that as somebody who's, I guess, prominent within the objectivist community somewhat. I mean, at this point, I've criticized Yaron Brook. I've criticized, I just have been very a vocal critic, and I want to continue to say this. I think it's wrong. It's not objectivism. It's immoral.
Yeah.
And I don't know if these people are afraid of the virus and this is why they're acting like this or what, but I don't get it.
I've had similar conversations. I do another podcast weekly with a state legislator here in Minnesota. And we had a couple of episodes, only one of which was published, where we debated this about whether or not businesses ought to be prohibited from mandating the vaccine for their employees. And that's my position. I believe they should be prohibited. And I
appreciate that. I mean, we used to really value that HIPAA and like it's your medical stuff is private and
right. And his position is he thinks it's a violation of the government's rightful role to ban a private mandate, but he wants to keep the state from mandating it of their employees. And ultimately, my question to him was, well, why? What's the difference? Like, if you feel as though it's appropriate for a business to hold a person's livelihood over their head to coerce them into taking a drug that in their judgment they otherwise would not put into their body, if you think that's moral and that's okay, why shouldn't the state do it too? You can't just say, well, because it's the state and they're private. Well, no, we're talking about the relationships between individuals. If one individual can hold a thing of value over another person's head and say, you will put a drug in your body, why can this individual do it and that individual can't? Or this institution can do it and that institution can't? Don't give me this public-private nonsense. The end result is the same. Somebody's being coerced to act against their judgment in a way that has long-term effects on their body. I mean, this is really
seems
basic
like the
moral math.
skin is a line that you shouldn't be able to ever cross.
Yes.
The sovereignty of the individual.
That's exactly right. I mean, if individualism means anything at all, if individual rights mean anything at all, it means that you should have control over what goes into your body. The notion that we used to have this idea that went parallel with the notion of mind your own business, this idea of risk assessment or risk assumption, that by the act of getting out of bed in the morning, you are assuming the risk that you might trip and fall over something on the way to the bathroom and break your neck. By getting into a car and going to work, you're assuming the risk that you may in fact get in an accident and get ejected out the window and die. Like, that's a risk that you're assuming, and it's nobody else's responsibility. Other people don't have to refrain from getting in their cars and getting on the road because it might result in you getting in an accident. You don't get to tell other people that they can't live their lives because you living yours presents some sort of risk to you. We all are in the same boat when it comes to the risks that surround us in the world and that we encounter through the act of living. Life itself carries risk, and you have no right to be safe. Being safe is not something that somebody else can guarantee for you. And it's not something that you can demand that other people provide for you. Yeah. This goes to and it's particularly interesting to see this dynamic play out in a debate amongst objectivists, because it's literally the whole point of Atlas Shrugged.
I know.
Right? Like, the whole point of the book is, I will not live my life for someone else, nor ask them to live their life for me.
Right.
That's the whole
point.
So how can you read that and even more than that, create an organization that supposedly exists for the purpose of perpetuating that idea in society, and then say, no, you need to take a medicine for my sake. You need to put on a mask for my sake. You need to do all of these things against your own rational self-interest, your own rational judgment.
Yeah.
For me.
Because I say so.
Sacrifice your judgment for me.
Because I think so. Yeah. Because that's this is, they're controlling. I mean, anyway. Yeah. Very good point. That is the whole point of the book. And I just wanted to make a comment too on this idea that people can get medical exceptions to this. Just a little anecdote here, when they passed it in California, they mandated the full CDC schedule for all children, public and private school. They said, well, this is how they got it through. If you need a medical exemption, you can get one. And people were still up in arms because they're like, well, but what if I just don't want to, which is their right. And people thought, okay, like a lot of good people thought, well, but you can get a medical exemption if it's dangerous for your child. First of all, like, how do you get a medical exemption? How do you prove to a doctor? How do you have the triple blind study that proves to a doctor that your child is at risk?
Right.
You'd have to have a child who had an extreme reaction to another, it would be the most extreme cases. It wouldn't be the milder cases. And how would you ever prove that the autoimmune disease that they got 3 months later was from the vaccine? It's just very, very hard to prove. But a lot of people just are against taking medicine that feels unnecessary, right? Like, they just don't want to put drugs into their kids. They want their kids to be as natural and human as possible. And that's their right. So anyway, but the medical exemption thing came. So what did the government here do? They sued the doctors giving the medical exemptions and threatened their licenses, right, which shut down all medical exemptions in this state. There are no medical exemptions.
Yep.
If you are afraid to give your child one of the vaccines, because even if they've had a reaction, it would be hard to get a medical exemption in the state. You need to leave. You just have to leave California. You can't have your kid in school here and not get the full schedule. So that is a myth. It doesn't happen. The medical exemptions aren't real. Okay. Moving on to something a little lighter. I'm going to share my screen again. I posted this. Did you see the meme of the feds? The feds at the rally. Did you see this?
I have not seen this. No, but
somebody took a photo of a bunch of guys at a rally, which, by the way, it was like I don't even remember what it was for. I think it was a rally for the January 6th people who've been arrested or something.
Yeah.
And hardly anybody was there. Attendance was super low.
Yeah.
And it was like half FBI agents at this thing. Like, And somebody took a photo of these obvious feds.
Right.
And this thing now has so many memes attached to it. So this is only feds, and that's making fun of the OnlyFans website.
Right.
Because these guys are so dorky.
Yeah.
They're such
It looks
douches.
like thinly veiled agents from the Matrix. Like
Yeah.
they're all there undercover.
Oh, and there are tons of Matrix references. So I just wanted to give you some more of these memes because they're so funny.
That's pretty good.
This one says some Photoshop genius made all of them wearing the AOC dress.
Right.
That had the tax the rich on the back. Only on the back it says MAGA country.
Right.
As if
Nice.
they're imposters trying to
Sure.
pretend like they're MAGAs. There's a Matrix reference here.
Yeah.
Here's another one. I love this one.
Abercrombie
and Snitch. Right?
Nice.
That's a good one. For some reason Facebook's not letting me scroll down to all of them. Anyway, that's a funny thing. So lastly, did you see any of the Met Gala pictures?
I did not, other than AOC.
Yeah, AOC. Well, one thing that's kind of making news is how none of the Met Gala people were wearing masks, but all the staff were wearing masks.
Right.
And even
Yep.
Bill Maher commented on that.
Yep.
Just look at this picture.
Mhm.
Here's this woman in a gown. And the irony is the gown says equal rights for women.
Right.
And then look at all these women in the back.
Yep.
Wearing masks while she's out in front with her fancy ball gown.
Yeah. And what's interesting is they're all dressed in uniform. They're all dressed in black gowns and arrayed in such a way as to fade into the background and be unseen.
Yeah.
All with masks on.
I think I got some more pictures on here. Here's some more pictures. Oops, I didn't mean to do that, but where you can see that everyone around these fancy people are wearing masks, and they're all out there with their screw the patriarchy, equal rights for everybody. Like they're all, it's literally Hunger Games, isn't it? They're so unaware.
Yep.
They're so unaware. Here she is. Equal rights for women.
Right.
Here's another shot. At least Kim Kardashian and Kanye were wearing masks. Here's Kim Kardashian. Do you see her?
I was going to say, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Kanye was similarly attired.
Nice. I'm surprised they let him in.
Yeah, right? So somebody online wrote something about this that I just am going to read. If hopefully that's not too boring to you. And then we'll look at some of these pictures. Or actually, I'll read it while you can look at some of these crazy pictures. This is Kim Kardashian.
Weird. I don't get it. Not that I'm a big fashion guy, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I used to enjoy stuff like this. Like this is supposed to be theater. It's supposed to be kind of wacky and kind of out there. These are supposed to be costumes.
Right,
it's a costume gala.
Right.
But it's become creepy mostly because these are the people trying to force you to do stuff that you don't want to do. Like nobody would care and nobody would criticize these people if they didn't literally think they were above everybody.
Correct.
And if they didn't literally want to control you and make you wear masks and make you take drugs and make you, I don't know, like, fine, I can Zoom and I can have my job at home while all these people who are who have to show up to work are unemployed suddenly because of the lockdowns,
Right.
or their children are no longer in school, but I can afford a tutor and I can afford, a nanny and all this stuff. So I'm fine, which by the way is my situation. Like, thank God. I don't know what I was so sick last year. I was in and out of the hospital. I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't afford a nanny to help my daughter with her Zoom school.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of people in that situation.
I realize I'm extremely fortunate. But look at this weird stuff.
She looks like a Christmas ornament, like a really bad Christmas ornament.
This one was funny to me because I thought she looks like, I remember when I was a kid and I went to camp and I made paper from toilet paper. They had us put twigs and things into toilet paper and make new paper like that we wrote on.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of reminds me of that, the fuzzy edges.
Right.
This girl, did you see the movie Abominable? The kids movie?
No, I don't think I did.
She kind of looks like the Abominable Snowman in that movie.
Nice.
We just have some real wackadoo stuff going on here. Here's Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are crazy. Okay, so here's what Bartholomew Chiaroscuro says. That's a nom de plume. It's not real, but this guy is so brilliant, and I don't know who he is. Some guy from England. Okay, he writes, the more pictures that come out of the Met Gala, the more they confirm that the top 5% by wealth watched the Hunger Games and considered the bit where the weird bastards in funny costumes are overthrown as the dystopia, and all the stuff before that as the perfect template of the kind of society we need in real life.
Yep. That's absolutely dead on right.
They took the dystopia as the instruction manual. Then they made it real. Then they rubbed in how real it is by dressing like Xerxes from 300. You probably didn't see Lil Nas X. He dressed like, look at this crazy stuff. This guy's got green hair. Lil Nas X is literally dressed like Xerxes from. Let's see if I can find him on here. Here's that horrible woman.
Oh yeah, Rapinoe. Yeah,
she's
what a
the
garbage
worst.
person.
Totally. And women just get half naked for anything these days.
Yeah, right.
Here's tennis pro who can't handle bad press. Look at her. Osaka,
Nice.
whatever her name is. She cries anytime she gets criticized.
Right.
But look at her.
Yep.
She's putting it in your face, people.
Yeah.
You can see there's more craziness.
Is that Cher?
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Doesn't say. Looks like Cher, doesn't it?
Yeah. She's going to live forever.
She's fermented.
Yeah. She's living on the blood of young men or something.
Oh, here's Debbie Harry. Let's see if I can. Okay, so he goes on. Okay, then they made it real. Then they rubbed in how real it is by dressing like Xerxes from 300. Each one a towering confection of rampant idiocy, hypocrisy, and vanity. Mm-hmm. An outfit and a subspecies of humanity that couldn't exist without busily attendant servants. Think about that. An outfit that can't exist without servants attending you constantly.
Right. Well, it's like the old ancient throne that the slaves would carry on their shoulders, with the poles.
Yeah.
Like if you take the slaves away, it literally can't do anything. That's exactly correct.
Yeah. So he's comparing it to that.
Yeah.
A fucking human carnival float celebrating the festival of the death of the West. The dumbest people you could ever hope to never meet, elevated into a stratosphere of attention and privilege for no discernible reason at all, acting as the human bad idea sketchbook for A-level art students who also somehow stumbled into success as fashion designers. Rich people who don't pay their taxes, paying other rich people who don't pay their taxes to make them outfits that say, tax the rich.
Right.
Crone-faced harridans straight from the casting line for a Roald Dahl production of Witches. After Roald Dahl has furiously demanded more obviously evil, they have to be more obviously evil. One of these was wearing the words equal rights, whilst a line of servants are wearing masks. The crone, of course, was not. To be honest, I'm not even sure that one was from the Met Ball. It could have been the latest G7 meeting, the Tory Party conference, or the bloody Oscars. It's all the same anyway. Gather some evil fucks, celebrate a few rapists and child molesters, spunk away a few million quid on ludicrous outfits, and hey presto, you have the elite social calendar event. It really, really wouldn't surprise me if working class blokes from council estates in British seaside towns are abducted in order to fight to the death in gladiatorial contests at the average dinner party these days. You know, when Kirk is told to wrestle for an alien Roman soldier with disturbingly pouty lips, that sort of thing. I can just see Lady Gaga requesting that the heavily shackled Barry from Southend be brought to her private chambers. Or Lewis Hamilton doing the same. I can just hear the Star Trek Gladiator music kicking in. Are these freaks gonna F me or eat me? Barry says. Oh, both, says the gold-painted midget with the teeth filed to points and the diamond nipple rings. That's if they don't give you to Pfizer.
Oh, that's great. That is fantastic. You know, it is true. And I've talked about this elsewhere. We are living in a moment that has enabled people's inner elitist segregationist to come out. That's what we're witnessing. We are witnessing the stratification and the new Jim Crow segregation of society, where people, because these people who are parading themselves around with their servant enabled costumes, as the guy puts it, while the help is masked in the background, they have always felt as though they were being poisoned by the exhalations of the little people around them.
Yeah.
That is always how they have felt.
Yeah.
Now they just have a rationalization to back it up. You're dirty. You stand over there. You're dirty. Put this muzzle on your face so I don't have to breathe in whatever it is you're breathing out. I don't want to share a swimming pool or drinking fountain or a lunch counter with you. This is the exact same mentality as Jim Crow.
Wear a mask when you get on a plane. I don't want to breathe the same air
Right.
as you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also it's that, and it's also because they know you'll do it and putting you in your place. I took my family to the Renaissance Fair for the first time in a few years over the weekend. And at one point I was standing in line at the ATM, and this costumed couple who were, arrayed in medieval regalia passed in front of me in the line, and they said, make way for your betters. And they went on through, and everybody laughs, and you laugh about it. But I thought about it. I'm like, that mentality, like, people don't literally do that anymore, but that is the mentality of this
Absolutely.
COVID fascism.
Absolutely
It is.
Look at this woman here. She's a freak. She's literally a freak. And her hands she's being held up by attendants. These people should be in circuses. They're carnival people.
Right. Unhealthy. Like, you look at them and they're unhealthy.
Yeah,
they're not healthy people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of unhealthy people in general, in different ways. I mean, there's a lot of drug use and alcoholism going on, not just in the elite crowd.
Yeah.
It's just a really weird, it's a tough time. The West is definitely declining, but this person's wearing a quilt.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the worst.
That's a man wearing a quilt as a dress.
Let's call him a male. I don't know about a man.
What's up with dudes in dresses right now? That really feels very
it's
to me. It really does. Like, it feels very late stage somehow.
Yes. Well, it's the same thing as what you guys were talking about last time with Harry behind Merkel. It's the flipping of the script. And it serves the same purpose as any sort of artistic perversion, right? Like, it's meant to be subversive for the sake of subversion. And it's boring. It's just boring at this point. Like everybody treats it. Basically, a rule of thumb that you can adopt is anytime somebody's fashion choices or statements or public proclamations, anytime those are described as stunning and brave and courageous, you know that the opposite is true, right? You know that they are taking zero risks and reaping in nothing but benefit and adulation. You know, it's like when Oprah, the example I keep going back to is Oprah Winfrey at one point got up at an award show and gave a speech against rape and got a bunch of, you know, applause and adulation and articles written about what a wonderful person she is. And it's like, and how courageous it was. It's like courageous. Like this is a woman who's at the top of her game, who everybody in that room wants to get next to, who loved her the moment she walked in the door, saying the most uncontroversial thing that literally nobody disagrees with. And that's courageous.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Right. Look at this guy. His courageousness is that his outfit includes a green doll.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I mean, these people are ridiculous.
Yeah.
People should pay money to see them in a freak show. They're circus people. Oh, here's the guy, Lil Nas X.
Looks like C-3PO.
Yeah. Or Xerxes from 300. Here's another. He had 3 outfits. Here's another one of his outfits. Lord.
That's terrible.
He's so gross.
It looks like that second outfit looks like what's the guy's name? I can't think of it off the top of my head now. I really, really wish I could, but he's a rock star turned actor. He was in the original Dune. I can't think of his name. But yeah, that outfit looks like the exact same costume.
Here's the guy who's going to be in the new Dune.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you notice that, speaking of, you know, effeminate men, you notice how all of our protagonists in television and film are getting progressively less manly, like, you know, smaller, shorter, weaker,
very pale, very narrow arms, very weak. Yeah, I have noticed that. And yeah, where's the Magnum PI?
Right.
Where's the Tom Selleck's, man?
Well, it's pretty bad when you're looking back on. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who was in the original Doom, who was also in Twin Peaks.
Kyle
MacLachlan. Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah.
When Kyle MacLachlan starts to look like a
manly man,
a towering bastion of manliness, right? When in comparison to what you're doing today, that tells you how bad it's gotten.
Yeah. And I'm hearing I'm kind of connected to people here who are in the entertainment and media business in California. Yeah. And I'm also hearing that no white men are getting jobs.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, enjoy it while it lasted.
Something else. And I think we're noticing people are starting to say, how come all the commercials and all the magazine covers are minorities?
Yeah. Well, it's not only that, it's, you know, I'm both the product of and a partner in interracial marriage.
Yeah.
But every ad is some like unintelligibly interracial family, where like you look at it and it doesn't even make, like, you forget what they're even talking about, because you're like, how is this a thing? Like, I don't understand how all these people are in the same household. This doesn't make any sense.
You mean like the kids don't match the parents,
right? And the parent,
everything weird, and
everything's. But you're just supposed to and it's almost like it's a bait. Like they set it out there, fishing for the one person who's like, wait, what? And then they can point at that guy and be like, racist.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and white people, how dare you object to the fact that I honestly don't even care, and I wouldn't have noticed, except it's everywhere. Like it's every commercial, and after a month, you're sort of like, oh, well, what happened to white people? Why are white people erased? How's that good?
You know what's weird and telling is that because there is this concept of hyper reality, right? The notion that media creates a perception of the real that is disjointed from actual reality. And so when they talk about representation of minority groups, if you just sit and you stream stuff and you watch TV and you see ads on whatever YouTube or whatever, if you do that long enough and then you go out into the real world, you'll be shocked because the real world is still lily white everywhere you go for the most part.
Yeah.
Unless you go to the Black part of town or the Hispanic part of town or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like when I go to a school function and I see this sea of white faces, it's completely disjointed from everything that's getting sent home in the backpacks, which is constantly talking about diversity, this and inclusion, that. And it's like there's a point past which it becomes a kind of a communal mental illness where you're fixated upon being something that you're not and frightened to death of recognizing what you actually are.
I grew up at a time, and you did too, where nobody obsessed about this.
Right.
And like white people are okay, Black people are okay. Like nobody, the Benetton ads. Somebody was saying the other day, well, you know, there used to not be any Black people on TV. I grew up with all those shows. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I saw Black people on TV every day. I watched all those shows as a white kid.
That's right.
I knew the Jeffersons. I knew the Cosbys. I watched all of those shows. There were more than that. I watched Sanford and Son. I mean, there were endless Black people on TV back then. And they were usually, I would say, proportionately represented at that time.
Yeah.
I don't think there were more. I don't think there were less. I think it was proportional. And of course there was a time when it wasn't, but let's stop. Like, God, we were almost there. And then these freaks came out with their racism.
Well, and I think it's important to recognize, not to dip too far back into our previous topic, the last time I was on here, but I think you say we were almost there. That's why they introduced the critical race stuff, because they were terrified that we might actually get there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Because if we actually got there,
plebes getting along with each other.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No. Because then who are they going to turn towards?
I'm loving this Black exodus, though. I mean, that's really happening, and I'm loving it. I love that the big resistance to the vaccines are Black people. I think that's great. It's so funny. So, oh well.
Well, you're seeing that with like the Nicki Minaj thing. There's a cost that I don't think has been counted by the left and by Democrats, that you're assuming they're trying to paint the resistance to their vaccine policies and to their COVID policies generally as being a bunch of MAGA hat wearing Trump supporters. Right. That's just not the case.
It's not true. In fact, prior to COVID, all the vaccine hesitant people were on the left, tended to be on the left. It was kind of this nature hippie,
right? Chelsea
Marin
Handler.
County outside of San Francisco was like this granola liberal community, hyper left, like all the schools were no vaccines. Anyway, yeah, it's interesting. We'll keep our eye on it, and I guess that's it for today. Walter, will you tell people how to find you? I know you're doing some stuff on the radio.
Yeah, I've got a couple of weekly podcasts. One is called The Bella D'Angelo Show. We stream every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can catch us at thebelladangeloshow.com. It's also available on Facebook. And then I do another weekly podcast with State Representative Jeremy Munson out of Minnesota called The Omnibus Podcast. The Omnibus Podcast, kind of a funky name, but it's a fun show, and we have great in-depth conversations about public policy and politics in Minnesota. So really appreciate you guys checking that out. And you can find either of those anywhere where podcasts are available, all of the platforms.
Do you tweet or anything?
I do. You can find me at Walter Hudson. I don't tweet a lot. I'm not a big fan of Twitter.
Yeah.
And I'm doing social media less and less nowadays. And usually when I do, I hit and run. Like I'll put out my thought and then just ignore every comment.
Yeah.
Like I didn't,
kind of that way too.
I'm not coming here to hear what you people have to say. Like I just wanted to put this out there. And if it's of value to you, great, but yeah.
I occasionally get hate mail on Facebook. Lately, I've been getting so much hate mail. I don't know what has happened. Somebody must have shared one of my posts in like a subversive group or something. Like, look at what this person's doing or something like that. Because suddenly. Anyway, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at Sunny Lohman. And obviously you're here. Go link in the comment for the unsafe space link. I'll also link that ARI article, and everybody have a great week. This podcast may not be next week, but it'll for sure be the week after that. And I will try to do something next week. I'm just going to have to look at my schedule. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Walter, for guest co-hosting. And We'll see you soon, everybody.
There is a house called the House of Sunny. It's filled with satire and fun. It's been the demise of bad ideas, and we'll know what's right when she's done. So download this free podcast now and give perspectives you may lack. It's concise and right and achieves world peace, guaranteed all your money back. Last time, ready?